Pokemon Legends Arceus comes out in just a few days, and I'm one of the lucky ones who got a chance to play it early, so I'm gonna give you guys my honest, full breakdown and review of this game right now. Let's dive in. Yo, whoa, what is going on YouTube? It's your boy Dan, aka aDrive. I'm bringing you guys a brand new video today, and today we are diving into the world of Pokemon Legends Arceus and the Hisui region, and I'm gonna do a full video game review, which is something I don't think I've really ever done on the channel, but I thought it'd be really helpful to those who are kind of on the fence about picking up this game, or those who are excited to jump into the journey and just want a little bit more insight. I'm gonna talk about some spoilers, but I'll probably keep them pretty light and just give you my experience through my first 26 hours of gameplay. Now, before I go too far in, you have to understand that I am a very hardcore Pokemon fan. I play the franchise every single day. I've been playing for 25 years, and I think I have a pretty good perspective of this game and how it compares to some of the other games in the franchise. So I'm gonna break it down based on a handful of different criteria. The criteria in this video are gonna be sound, graphics, the gameplay loop and the missions, the story, the difficulty, the shiny hunting aspect, as well as the replay value of the game. So we're gonna look at 7 different elements and break it all down about Pokemon Legends Arceus and my honest thoughts and review for the brand new game in the Hisui region. As always, be sure to like the video if you guys enjoy and subscribe to the channel if you're new so you don't miss out on our epic Pokemon Legends Arceus gameplay and much, much more. Without further ado, let's dive in to the review. All right, so the first thing we're gonna look at is the sound, and I'm gonna give this immediately a 10 out of 10. We know that the Pokemon franchise is very, very much so known for their incredible music, and I will say throughout the entirety of the region, the entirety of the gameplay, I was often in awe at the music and the soundtrack that was taking place in the backtrack. At some points, I will say there were some weird situations where like you'd kind of be caught up in the middle of the sound changing because you're on a ride Pokemon, or maybe an alpha Pokemon's targeting you and stuff like that. So I don't know if I fully got a true impact of what each area's music track was supposed to be, but it didn't necessarily feel out of place. Like there's the right amount of tempo, there's the right amount of like energy that comes from those different moments, and ultimately I think with any Pokemon game you're gonna give it a 10 out of 10 on sound. Like they always crush it. Obviously there's no voice acting or anything in this game, so that's one thing that I would say that I would like to potentially see in the future. However, it's not something that's super important to me, so I think when you just take a look at simply the music tracks in the back, I gotta give them just the highest score possible, but I'm not gonna be quite that generous on the next thing. So now we're gonna look at graphics, and I know that this is a big point of contention for a lot of fans. I'm gonna ultimately give the graphics a 7 out of 10, and you might be a little surprised at that rating. I do actually feel like overall the game feels really smooth in terms of playability. So while the graphics may not be the highest level of graphics we've ever seen, I didn't really feel like there was lag in any of the battles. I didn't feel like there was like really big render issues or anything like that. The absolute worst that I experienced was if a Pokemon is pretty far away, sometimes their wings will kind of lag when they flap a little bit, but we're talking like very, very far away. And also when it comes to like, I remember one time I saw like a person in the city who was sweeping and their broom was a little bit laggy. But again, this is at like our max render distance for these characters that are showing up. So it didn't really impact my gameplay at all. Like I didn't really care for that. It didn't bother me. I will say the animations that they put in the game for all the different attacks look really, really cool. The fact that you can kind of circle around the battles really gives you this epic feel. The different times of day really illuminate things. I like the lighting. And I don't feel like the areas were barren. I felt like they had enough going on. Like, yes, it's gonna be a lot of the same rocks and boulders that you're trying to farm, and the same trees that you wanna throw your Pokemon at to get stuff. And there's Pokemon sprawled throughout the different landscapes, but they're diverse enough, and the graphics are kind of vary enough that it didn't feel like I was really looking for more. So while I'm not gonna like give them a 10 out of 10 on graphics, because obviously they're limited by the Switch and it's Pokemon's, they're not really known for their graphics, I was actually really impressed with how everything played, and I would rather have a game that played with this level of graphics that plays smoothly than kind of what we had in the past couple Pokemon games where you would have a double battle, and if you had like weather up and a Pokemon like Moltres with a heavy intensive model, the game would just lag like crazy. At no point during my gameplay did it lag, which was a really, really pleasant surprise. So ultimately, like I said, I give the graphics a 7 out of 10. Obviously, there's room to improve, but I don't play Pokemon for the graphics, you know what I mean? Like, so to me, it wasn't a huge point of contention, and I encourage anyone who lets the graphics get in the way to kind of see past that, because there's a lot of really positive things about this game, far beyond the graphics. The next thing we're going to talk about is the gameplay loop and the missions. So basically the way this game works is you kind of start off in Jubilife City, which is kind of like this new village that's being started. You go out into the different fields like the Obsidian Fieldlands. You do field research where you capture Pokemon and kind of understand and learn more about them. And then you return essentially back to Jubilife to report your findings. And throughout this process, there's missions. There's also little quests that people are going to give you. There's the main storyline, but there's also side missions. And I will say that I went into this kind of worried that the missions and the gameplay loop would be very boring and repetitive. And it was going to be basically, hey, find me a Buizel, bring it back. But I was very surprised and encouraged at the fact that it's way more dynamic than that. Yes, at the core, a lot of it is go find this Pokemon and bring it back, but there's a lot more to it. There's little storylines weaved in, like Drifloon and the fact that it's known to steal children at night. That's like a little quest that you can do. There's a quest to find a shiny Pokemon. There's quests where you help find a specific type of Pokemon to help them build out the farm in Jubilife, right? There's quests to find a specific Pokemon that looks a certain way, so that way this particular person can give you new clothing items. So they were weaved in a nice way, and there's some really, really home run quests in there as well that require quite a bit of thought. It's more than just what meets the eye, and I feel like those few quests really allow this game to stand out. And there's one particular in mind that I don't want to spoil for you guys, but there's one that you actually have to like reference previous Pokemon games and do a little digging outside of this game to really understand what you need to do. And I feel like that added a whole nother level of gameplay and depth that I was really, really pleased with. When it comes to the gameplay loop itself of capturing these Pokemon, yes, there is a level of repetitiveness that comes with finding a Geodude and recapturing it, but because each of the species of Pokemon behave differently, I didn't really find myself getting bored. In fact, I would say for the first time ever, I was excited to find new species of Pokemon that I hadn't previously captured, as a big focal part of this game is to ultimately complete the Pokedex. So for the first time ever, I would see, let's say, a Basculin or I don't know, a Bergmite, anything, right? Like any random Pokemon. If it was the first time I had seen them on my playthrough, I was excited to see them because I knew that I wanted to capture them and figure out how to capture them. And there's a level of depth to that as well, where you can utilize different items like berries and things of that nature to try to encourage that Pokemon to be easier to capture. So overall, I give the gameplay loop and missions a 9 out of 10. It exceeded my expectations, and this was probably the biggest point of contention for me going into this game. And my concern of this game was it was going to be very repetitive and very boring. And again, there is a level of repetition to it, but I didn't find it to be boring or tedious at any point during my 26 hours of gameplay. In fact, I'm still excited to keep going and keep exploring the regions and finding some of the Pokemon that I haven't found yet. And I'm still excited to tackle a lot of the missions because I did skip a good chunk of the missions. I focused on the ones that I felt were most important at the time. A lot of them are kind of not necessary because the rewards aren't really good, but there are some that are really, really necessary and bring a lot of value by doing them. So ultimately, I give the gameplay loop and the missions a 9 out of 10. Now, story is a tough one, man, because I'll be the real one where I say, I don't really play Pokemon for story either. In fact, when it comes to BDSP and Sword and Shield, I couldn't care less about the storylines in those games. I find them to be pretty monotonous in most cases, but in the case of Legends Arceus, I was actually enamored at the fact that the story was actually pretty solid. I will say that. They set up a really, really cool kind of backstory for why you're there. They set up a really cool kind of detailed explanation as to how the people in the region kind of function. And the lore of Hisui really gets weaved in throughout the entirety of the game as you continue to uncover different pieces of the puzzle and understand why people behave the way they do and how this region and how we're looking at a time when really people in Pokemon did not coexist super well. So it's really, really weaved into the gameplay, and it's a unique Pokemon experience that I grew to really enjoy as I continue to play through it, as they continue to peel back the layers of these various aspects of the story. Now, I will say, there gets to be a point where you're kind of like, wait, what just happened? Like, who is this random person that shows up? And again, I'm trying to stay spoiler free, but ultimately, you kind of get to the point where the information they give you is well crafted. The climax of the story was something that I found was a good resolution, and there is a post-game aspect to this game as well, which I haven't even started yet, and I understand that there's quite a bit of post-game that's taking place that even continues to peel back those layers. So ultimately, like I said, I'm not someone who cares much for the story, but I will say that I was satisfied with the story and how the backstory and everything was kind of put into place as you go through the game. So I like the characters, some more than others. I like the fact that they tied in a few elements from, you know, kind of some of the stuff that we already know, like future games essentially. And ultimately, I'm gonna give the story a 9 out of 10, which I think this is probably the highest score I would have ever given any Pokemon game in terms of story. Maybe you could argue some of the other games. Like I would not give Sword and Shield a 9 out of 10, that's for sure. I definitely feel like that's like probably like a 6 or a 7. But I really actually was pretty satisfied with how everything played out. And I felt like, again, learning the lore of this Pokemon region and the kind of everything that was set in place as you go through the game was really satisfying. The next thing we're gonna talk about is difficulty. And again, Pokemon games are not really difficult games generally. But I will say when it comes to the difficulty level, this was probably the hardest Pokemon game I've ever played, I guess you could say. And you have to remember that this is coming from the perspective of a very adept player. I'm someone who does competitive. I've competed at a very high level in VGC and competitions. I've done draft league battles. So if anyone knows competitive Pokemon, it's me. And games like this are not usually a challenge for me. I've played games similar to this in the past. But I will say that the difficulty level I actually feel like is really, really solid for the average player. I will tell you that I actually fainted the trainer a few times, which I think is something that I was surprised. I didn't think that that would happen. There's a few boss fights that are actually pretty tough, and I anticipate a lot of people will probably fail in those fights. And I think that this game has a tremendous amount of potential from a challenge perspective, which would be the aspect of a Nuzlocke. I know a lot of people are concerned about how to do a Nuzlocke. I'm gonna have a video about that soon, but I feel like this could be one of the best games to do a challenge run ever, personally, because there is a very significant level of difficulty if you were to add a Nuzlocke factor into this. And I will say that for the average person who maybe isn't super adept at this game, I think there are gonna be parts where you struggle a little bit. And to me, that is something that we really haven't seen from the Pokemon franchise, or at least not as of late, with the exception of maybe the Elite Four and Cynthia and BDSP. So this was a step in the right direction for a more serious take on the franchise. So ultimately, I give the difficulty an 8 out of 10. I was very satisfied with it. I didn't feel like it was steamrolly or anything like that. In fact, I actually felt like it was probably the perfect amount of difficulty for a Pokemon game. So I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 for my own personal needs, and I assume a lot of people watching this are more adept players. I think in the right hands, this is a 10 out of 10 for difficulty, if I'm being honest. I think it was a very good assessment by the Pokemon Company to make it as hard as it is, because again, it's not so hard that you can't get through it, but it's also not so easy that you just steamroll everything. I would have loved to see a difficulty option though, because I feel like if this was the normal and they had one step higher and made the boss fights a little bit harder and made some of the kind of Pokemon scale a little higher levels, there'd be a whole nother level there. But again, we'll talk Nuzlocke in another video because I think there's a lot of value there. You're not gonna see too many game reviewers talk about shiny hunting, but that's something that I'm gonna put in here as well. And I will tell you guys, I have all the insight I need for the shiny hunting method. I will give you guys a video on that very, very soon. I've done the testing. I spent, separate from my 26 hours of gameplay, I spent another 10 hours practicing, testing, and understanding the shiny hunting method. And I will tell you that I believe the shiny hunting in this game is a 10 out of 10. I feel like the new shiny hunting method is actually phenomenal. I think it adds a lot of replay value to the game. I think that there's another aspect of shiny hunting that is incredibly cool, that's separate from the new method, that has someone like me as a shiny hunter very excited. So I'm gonna kind of glance over this a little bit because there's more to talk about, but I would give shiny hunting a 10 out of 10. And I think if you're someone who enjoys shiny hunting, you can dive right in right from the beginning and use the new method right away. You can find amazing shiny Pokemon throughout the region, and you could essentially choose, for the most part, what you want to hunt. And there's another type of shiny that you can get, not like a different color palette, but essentially you can hunt the alpha Pokemon, which I think is going to add a whole new level for shiny hunters to chase after, as those I believe would be full odds. There's a chance that there's some other shiny hunting methods that I'm a little unsure of because we're waiting for the full data mine and like coding, but I genuinely think this is going to be one of the best shiny hunting games we've had, maybe since X and Y ORAS time period, which is when I kind of came into the Pokemon community for content. So I'm over the moon about shiny hunting, and I think if you're a shiny hunter, this game is a no-doubter. You got to pick it up. They also, kind of the way the game works is you'll naturally find shinies as you play through the game. I can tell you guys, I found 2 shinies full odds randomly. You guys are going to laugh really hard when you see which ones I got. But because the nature of the overworld shinies just popping up, it's pretty common, I think, for people to just kind of run into them in their experience. And I think that that's actually a good thing. So I loved it. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the replayability. How likely is someone going to want to replay Pokemon Legends Arceus? I think for some people, they're going to play this game once, obviously. they're gonna fail to complete everything because there's gonna be a lot to do, right? 26 hours to beat the main game for me. You could easily put in 30, 40, 50, 60 hours to do what I did. To 100% the game or to get to the final parts of the game. I mean, you could definitely spend 100 hours. I think there's no doubt about that, and even more. I think if you were to probably do everything the game has to offer, you're probably at like 150, 200 hours, maybe more still. But in terms of replay value, I can tell you I'm eager to start my next playthrough. I don't know when I'm gonna do it, but I think the appeal of a challenge run like a Nuzlocke is absurdly high. I think the appeal of doing a shiny playthrough is absurdly high. There's a lot of potential replay value, and I think just playing through the game again is really high because you can do different quests, you can find different Pokemon, like because of the day-night cycle, because of the way the spawns work, because of the way like you can always formulate a different team and pick a different starter and kind of experience some of these random things that happen in the game. There is some serious replay value. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10, and this is coming from someone who like, I usually replay Pokemon games. To me, BDSP had like a 4 replay value, right? Like I replayed it a few times and it was gruesome to replay BDSP, like gruesome. Like I did not enjoy replaying BDSP. I'm looking forward to replaying Arceus. So that should give you some insight as to kind of what I think about the long term of this game. And I think last but not least, we'll kind of conclude everything we said. If I were to add up and average out my scores, we end up coming out an 8.9 out of 10 with everything I said. So sound was a 10 out of 10, graphics are a 7, the gameplay loop and the missions I gave a 9, story a 9, difficulty an 8, shiny hunting 10, replay value 9, and then that we could essentially round up to a 9 out of 10. To me, this is the best Pokemon experience I've ever had. I highly recommend it if you like Pokemon or like adventure games like Legends of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I think you'll enjoy this game. I think this is a must pick up, in my opinion. I think there's no exceptions. If you're someone who even dabbles in the Pokemon franchise, I think you have to get this game. And I genuinely believe that this is the best Pokemon experience I've ever had in the 25 years that I've played Pokemon. With maybe the exception of like the magic of when I was a small child, 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever, playing through the games for the first time. This was certainly the best experience I've had in my adult life, and I can't recommend it enough. I think Pokemon Legends Arceus is gonna go down in history as a pivotal point in the Pokemon franchise, and I hope that they take some of the lessons from this game and some of the learnings from this game and adapt it to future games, because I genuinely think it is that good, personally. So that's my honest review, and I'm sure some people are gonna be like, man, you're overly positive. How could you do that? And then there's gonna be people who are like, man, you were a little harsh on these different parts, but ultimately these are my opinions, and I genuinely think this is the best Pokemon experience I've ever had. I don't think it, I believe it. It's true, that's how I feel. But you may feel something different, of course. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But man, I'll tell you what, I think Legends Arceus is gonna go down in history as a pivotal and impactful moment in the Pokemon franchise. I'm so glad that they were willing to change up the formula because it is phenomenal, and I love it, and I can't wait to keep playing it, man. I really have not been this excited to play Pokemon, maybe ever. Seriously, it is that good. Thank you guys so much for watching my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you guys did, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.
Butterfree, go!